Dear colleagues, good morning. We are starting our work. The topic of the first event, Against Violence, Hromadske Radio presents its first book. Our guest is Waschuk, extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador of Canada to Ukraine, Kateryna, Levchenko, president of the International Women Advocacy Center, Strada, Ukraine, and Larysa Denysenko, author and coordinator of the project, journalist of Hromadske Radio. The floor is given to Mr. Ambassador. Please talk to the mic. It's switched on. Good morning. Доброго ранку. This book, which is being presented under our project of the free legal assistance, is about us against violence, and it is designed for Ukrainians, first of all, who, while reading this book, may think about the issue of domestic family violence, general violence in the life. It is also about us because topics dealt here are universal. And as far as I know, this project and our collaborators, this project is unique. Our collaborators have been working on it very hard. And it combines professional writers, professional psychologists, social workers, and human rights experts who have created a unique package for thinking over human rights, human dignity, about how to oppose various type of misuses. For us, for Canada, it's a priority of our foreign policy. Generally, women's rights, girls' rights, and this is a priority for our programs of development, but also rights of men and boys, regardless of their gender identity, is a very important issue for Canada and for the government. Ця публікація була створена проєктом на захист прав людини.
Through the system of legal aid. Книжка основана на, я б сказав,
writers' vision of real events about family, about women, about men who all suffer from violence and its consequences. All these stories invite the reader to think and to talk about phenomena described in the book. This domestic violence problem is not unique for Ukraine. It's a universal problem, and it's vital for the whole world, and societies are trying via their legislations, social programs, human rights protection programs to look at this phenomenon. According to the World Health Organization, up to 30% of women in the world have suffered either physical or sexual violence from their partners, intimate partners, or husbands in Europe. The violence in the family is the most important reason of death of women from 16 till 44 years old. So this issue needs our attention here in Canada. The domestic violence level is decreasing, but it still remains an important issue. In Ukraine, which can be evidenced by experts better than I am. The number of calls to the police last year as to domestic violence accounted for 150,000 cases, and this is only a small percentage of calls to the police. All these complicated issues require from us focus and attention from us, human rights advocates, public officials, police workers, journalists. So we have to act and counteract this violence. Such organizations as Strada and such mass media organization as Hromadske Radio are making an important thing, and also hot telephone calls, hot telephone numbers also give people an opportunity to get consultation in these issues. Also, government structures have a social responsibility to create the whole toolkit to struggle this social evil in Canada. We have the Ministry of Women's Status that coordinates various public structures. Ukraine is just generating this approach, and we have a wide field for work. In November, the Verkhovna Rada adopted a law against domestic violence, but it didn't ratify Istanbul Convention. So we need efforts of parliamentarians and human rights protectors, and I hope that this book and the discussion around it, and also private reflections it can evoke, will help our matter. Thank you. Mr. Ambassador Kateryna Levchenko is welcome to have the floor. Good afternoon. This issue is really very important, and the figures that we manipulate here in Ukraine and also in other countries never reflect the whole scale of phenomena. We know the police statistics, then they ranges from 130 till 250,000 applications per year, but according to our calculations, it's only 10 or 15% of all the cases available. We have hotline statistics, and the hotline has been working 24 hours starting from this year's February, and it is working on the basis of the Strada Center, and we get about 130,000 cases. And we have statistics of the Ministry of Social Policy. We also have various research assessing that every third woman or every second woman suffers from domestic violence. They are all evaluation categories, but the question, the phenomenon is serious. We can say that this phenomenon is very serious, but even if several people suffer from it, it presents also a very serious problem. As representatives of the Women's Human Rights Protection Organization, we are honored to cooperate with the team of authors and famous writers of Ukraine. This cooperation, I hope, is very useful to the society, but it has enriched us greatly. It has opened new horizons, new approaches, because for NGOs always come across a problem of widening a category of people we can influence. We can outreach owing to our information campaigns, owing to our materials, and we understand that the literature, fiction literature, high-quality literature, gives us an opportunity to communicate with a very wide readers' audience. And it's also very important. The problem is not only in the fact that Ukrainian laws dealing with opposing gender-based violence or domestic violence are not perfect. Unfortunately, Mr. Ambassador, the Parliament has adopted this law only in the first reading. It hasn't become a law yet. The Istanbul Convention hasn't been ratified. But after the failure in the Parliament that also required reflections, we have come to understand better that the ratification is a step, but we have to climb a high mountain, not just to make one step. And it's very complicated. We have to implement all the things available in the convention. First of all, changing the consciousness of the society, changing the society's attitude to violence problem, changing values. And when I got this very great honor to write an introduction to this book, it took me a lot of time to think about it. I'm not a writer, and I'm not able to compete with our authors. I didn't want to remunerate stories or statistics or just to speak about available laws. I thought that it would be very important to analyze the strategies used by the society to feed violence, why it exists, why it is in place even in civilized families, and why it exists among people having important positions in the society, in businesses. We have such a strategy as a regulatory strategy. Violence is a standard. Very many people think so, that using violence they can be more efficient and faster to solve any problems, including family problems, because violence is not just a conflict or a partnership conflict when partners cannot divide some things, but violence is a manifestation of power and an instrument of control. And when people lack other means to establish power, or when they don't understand, when the family level requires partnership attitude, then violence will be used.
There is a strategy of implementation which is very well described in short stories. Your father is in good mood, etc., etc. There are those who resort to violence. They become the heroes, not only in his own eyes, but also in the eyes of people who surround him. There is also a theory of punishment. We know that not only from those short stories, but practical life and our continuous communication with those who suffered, fell victims to violation. Actually, those people are violated, the victims, I mean, because for the fact that she exists, that she actually allows this violation to take place. And violation is the only way how to express one's own power, so to say, or the force. And there are strategies which actually are characteristic of those who live through violation. This is a strategy of getting used to this mode of life. They understand that the life goes on, and there are a lot of bright and very interesting moments, and I'm talking about your short story, and which describes very well the strategy of getting used. And the woman, this lady, is just afraid of just breaking this vicious circle of violence. Why do the victims keep silence? Because it seems that the misfortune which fell into their life actually is associated only with this specific person. This is not true, because this can happen to anyone. We can just to break this circle of silence and not to try to hush down violence. And here we come across very serious ideological resistance. I'm talking about the ideology of the so-called Russian world. And actually, the day of November 17th of this year was demonstrated that this ideology survives in Ukraine. It actually feeds on our forces and the living forces, and the idea which initiated in Russia and at the same time was developing in all the countries of the Eastern Partnership in Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, and Belarus, more so in Ukraine, as a mechanism to separate or to sever those countries from the Western Europe. And we saw that was left in the past, but it turned out today with the discourse of the Russian world associated with the relation over the women, trying to hush down the domestic problems, the violence. It still is alive in Ukraine, this phenomenon. It has the followers among the serious political structures, and this trend is going to increase in its power, and there are some indications of that. And the steps taken by democratic institutions, democratic society, together with our the international partners, they are very important, because without changing, transform our mentality and our conscience, and without understanding the violation that makes our life poor, we cannot make any progress or talk that Ukraine will have some time in democratic society. So the description of those, drawing attention to those problems, is very important, and I wish that as many our citizens could read this book and to derive, they'll say, the artistic pleasure, literary pleasure, if you will, just to have some food for their thoughts. After each short story is followed by comments of the psychological experts, psychologists actually, who participated in Strada Ukraine. They actually demonstrated what is used by those people, the violators and the victims. So we're not talking about the literary critics' opinion, but the real experts in this specific psychological sphere. So I would like that those who actually resort to violence start to think about its destroying or ruining force, and those who try to hush down this phenomenon, please do not be afraid of that, not to be intimidated by that. Please address the civil or the public organization, the law enforcement bodies and whatnot, and please call us at the hotline on Strada, which is 24/7/365. So they can provide you with a telephone number, both mobile and the fixed telephony. So thank you very much for your cooperation. I believe this is the first trial, let's say the first attempt of literary civil attempt or experiments. I'm certain that we have a continuation of that. Of course, we would like to have such books to be published in English language, because so not only the Ukrainian citizens can read that. Those short stories are versatile and all purpose, so to say, and they describe the very important issues. Thank you. We already mentioned a bit what is the uniqueness of this collection of works. Actual violation addresses us in different languages. We're talking about the moral, psychological, economic, and physical violence. This book actually resists or opposes the violation in different languages, psychological, moral, and literary language. You were talking about the hushing down and conservation or this problem. This, to me, it was very important to expand the circle of those who was going to discuss or to talk about that, those who can communicate and offer resistance or opposition to that. And so oftentimes people even do not realize that they are victim to violence. Some other people do not understand that they actually resort to violence or exercise violence. And the people cannot leave this vicious circle because they did not even know that there is a way out of that circle. So my task was to show abnormality of this situation, to show that the situation, this situation we can find the way out, despite the status despite any position in society. This actually is about all and everyone, and this very good team of people was involved when creating Sofia Andrukovich, Yuri Andrukovich, Elena Levchenko, Dalka, Levchenko, Sergei Saka, Artem Chapai, Uliana Kateryna, thank you, Ms. Kateryna, Levchenko, Larysa Denysenko, and wonderful advocates working with providing the assistance to those women who suffered, became a victim of violence, or good team of psychologists from Strada and the Ladies Prospects, a Perspective Foundation, who actually helped us. So please understand, we demonstrated here not some kind of the let's say the fantasies of any writer or whatever. They were there to some extent of this kind, but they can be easily recognized. They can, let's see, maybe your neighbors, maybe members of your family, maybe your past or your present time life. Those are very relevant, very simple, in my opinion, very powerfully, psychologically created and described stories. And Kateryna already mentioned that, again, this is kind of the components and moments of strategy when the heroes become the live creatures. From the childhood we love this. But this book describes the people, unhappy people. And each of us, we go sometimes some very unhappy moments in our lives. And psychologists, they resuscitate or animate, will say, those heroes. And here we're talking about when sometimes you cannot associate yourself with this or another hero lady of this book, but you can read about something which is actually also associated with your life. This is important. And now, how can treat that? The people can see that and do something about that. They can recommend to do something to his or her near and dear, because they encounter such a phenomenon. And what actually concerns me very much, this kind of police attitude to such domestic cases, which they call just the home violence. I also would like, there was quite a few trainings regarding the resistance to domestic violence, how the policeman must respond to that, for them to understand, to comprehend what is all that about, because there are some things which cannot be entered in the minutes of the protocol, policeman, the report, whatever, because we are the real people who suffered as a result of the violence, are the heroes of those reports, And I would like to say that this book can be obtained in the office of the public radio, Hromadske 6. We can find our contacts on our website, and but there is also checkpoint. It's not, you can freely enter our editorial office. But anyway, we actually were given the financial support from the government of Canada. There was also electronic format of this book, and actually it's free of charge. You don't have to pay for that book. We actually pay for the violence. You don't have to pay for this book. I believe it would be accessible and affordable also in the Strada offices and in the offices of the free legal defense or the legal assistance. We try to cover as much as possible the whole society, because any knowledge, any literature are instrumental in expanding or in widening our vision or our perception of the world. Without that, we just cannot make any progress or move forward. We are going to remain within the boundaries of concepts either imposed on us, or which we ourselves developed in ourselves. That there were a lot of males during the presentation ceremony, more than ladies, which is a rare case during such events, And one of the men actually put a question. There were a lot of questions on the part of the men. Larysa, this is not something characteristic of Ukrainian men to beat Ukrainian women. That actually was create something by the Russian world. This kind something which we imported from there, And we are talking about statistics. You cannot import everything. We have to be responsible for our conduct, our behavior, and to educate our people, bringing up our children. I mean, and not only us in society, those who feel themselves rather strong and powerful to do that, and also take care of the awareness campaign, if you will, because trying to hush down this problem, we turn this problem into some kind of domestic tragedy, and and this we cannot put out the fire of this violence. It will still kindle, and we can kindle it more and more. And actually, I mentioned that this book talks to us in 3 languages: psychologists, lawyers, and literary critics. Any language actually will echo in somebody's heart, and this is going to be a very useful book to be used by the tool, not just as a piece of literature to derive pleasure, not just the jurisprudence with a specific language, not just kind of psychological rehabilitation, but generally speaking, each and everyone will find this or another instrument useful to him or her. Thank you. And unfortunately, we run out of our time. We are going to have another briefing a few minutes from now. Thank you very much, and see you again.
Добрий.